Kia ora, bros and girls, welcome back to the channel. So we're back with chapter 3, trying to get you that 5-star rank 3 to 4 gem. Hopefully you enjoyed the first couple of videos of this completion guide. Chapter 1 kind of showed the most OP team and the OP team that I basically used, and I used again exclusively for this particular chapter, and I can't think of a better team for this particular chapter. And once you see the bosses, you'll understand why. And once you see the footage of the actual fights, the video fights with the bosses and the one-shots, you'll understand why I selected the team I did. Anyhow, let's jump straight into it. So let's talk about Chapter 3. And Chapter 3, you're going to come up against different variations of Yellowjacket. Now, if you just finished Chapter 2, you've just beaten the crap out of the first Yellowjacket. He was pretty easy. He didn't have Limber. He only had that SP1 that you had to worry about, and he had Aspect of Evolution, but if you killed him quickly enough, it didn't really matter too much. Now, it's going to get tougher than that, but that's your baseline. That's where you're about to start. So let's talk about the first map. The first map, I'm going to say probably the easy path is actually not that Fury path. It's actually this one down here, which is Aspects of Chaos, right? Because you can totally cheese that path. So you have two fights that you got to worry about, which is Mephisto with Empathic Lock and Minister Sinister with Empathic Lock. I love that guy, man. He's fantastic. He just sounds like a badass rapper. Anyway, so Mephisto. Of course, you're not going to gain power, and you're not going to be able to heal up or revive or anything within the first 8 seconds. So basically, the first 8 seconds you come in and you just dance around, really, waiting for all of those things to drop off, and after the 8 seconds you can start the fight. Now, Mephisto's pretty easy with Thing, to be honest. He always has been easy with Thing. You don't have to even go and access the indestructible part of your synergy. You can just basically one-shot this guy quite easily, just playing Thing normally, building up 20 stacks and so on. Minister Sinister is a little bit trickier, and maybe you want to bring somebody else for him. Maybe you want to bring a Warlock or something, but basically, I'll just use Thing, and just his SP2 is pretty easy, is pretty difficult to evade. His SP1 is easier to evade for most people. I know how to evade both, but I would tend to stick with evading that SP1 and basically just damaging him. It's gonna be a long fight because obviously he regens 70% of all crit damage that you do to him. But once again, if you come in with Thing and you play normal, you don't access your synergy, or even you use the rest of that synergy team, because you're not doing a heck of a lot of damage, they're probably not doing a heck of a lot of crits, then you can kind of tear away at these two and take care of him. So these two fights are going to be probably the toughest fights of the map until you get to the boss. Then after these two, you've got Aspect of Chaos, and all you really need is your Hela. That's it. You got Hela, and you've got the Heimdall synergy as well anyway. An Aspect of Chaos means you switch bars every 10 seconds. So basically, you just get the crap beaten out of you. You wait until the 10 seconds, you switch over with 1 HP, and then you fire off your special. And you can take care of everybody in this path, no matter how difficult they are. Scarlet Witch, Sentinel, Nightcrawler, Punisher, they all kind of work the same. The only one you have to be a little bit more careful with, I'd say, is probably Punisher, because when you hit him at 1, he goes into his awakened ability Endured comes on, and then you have to wait for a little bit of time. So try to make sure that you don't push him to a special before that. Like when you switch over and you set off Endure, make sure that he doesn't have like 1 bar power above, because he can still kill you if he throws a special through your block. But other than that, that's probably going to be the only tricky one on this line. But if you have Hela, you're sorted for the rest of the ones. And if you play carefully with Punisher, just be mindful that you can't just switch over to 1 and kill him straight away. The Endured will come up, and you will have to wait, I don't know, like 6 to 8 seconds or whatever until that wears off. And then Nebula is pretty easy. You just switch over. And so that brings us to the first of the Yellowjacket bosses. Well, the second of the Yellowjacket bosses, but the first Yellowjacket boss of the chapter 3. And this guy is a little bit more difficult than the last chapter, but he's the easiest of the 3 bosses you're gonna meet. Now, every boss in this chapter has at least 400,000 HP, 400,000 life, and the final boss I think has closer to 500,000 than 400,000. So they've got deep health pools. Um, the only tricky thing about this guy really is he's got limber, which means you don't have a heck of a lot of parries, and your parries, the timing is going to decrease over time. Now, Thing can absolutely destroy this guy because there's a few things that you're going to meet with the next couple of bosses that you don't have to worry about with this one. Basically, you can block through the SP1. It's not unblockable like the last guy in Chapter 2. So you don't have to either try to evade that or try to play around it and push him to his SP2. You're not in that panic, really. So you can just block the SP1 if you're not comfortable evading it, and then evade the SP2 if that's easy for you. Limber is really the only annoying thing about this guy. And so my idea or my plan is try to kill Thing early on. Ideally, you can even kill him off against Punisher. That'd be perfect, because he's got the Endured, you've got 2 Indestructibles, and then that works it out. And then you want to enter this fight with as little HP as possible with Thing. So you want to enter with about 1 or 2 HP. And then you want to take the hits early on. And the more hits you can take early on, the more indestructible charges you're going to take right at the start, the easier the rest of that fight is going to be. Hopefully you don't take an SP1. Before he throws an SP1, you should block it, because that will give you that power sting stun, which you don't want on you. And then once you've built up those charges, it's just a matter of taking this guy to the cleaners, pushing him to his SP2, evading that SP2. Also, once you've got 20 rock stack charges, you've got a double unblockable stun on your SP2, and you've got tons of damage to access on your SP3. So you are able to easily deal with this guy. He's less complex than the next couple of maps. So with that being said, once you finish this guy, we'll move on to the next chapter. Now, once again, like I always say, just stay tuned, because I will upload the actual footage of all the boss takedowns, and I will be explaining kind of my strategy as you watch the fight, just to understand what you really have to watch out for and what you have to kind of take into account. So, Chapter 2, the lines are kind of interesting, because you got a Havoc there, which is a bit of a pain in the ass, and you have Spider-Gwen, which is a bit of a pain in the ass, and you've got Domino, which is a bit of a pain in the ass, and on the Poison line you got Killmonger, which is a pain in the ass, you got Nightcrawler. And so this whole line, this whole map for 100% is going to be a little bit annoying, because there's some really annoying fights, but the easiest line of all is probably the Spider-Gwen line. So it's basically Poison, Vulnerable line, and Brute Force, which means that you've got to play aggressive and hit every 6 seconds, otherwise you're going to get a degen on you. Bear in mind that if a degen is on you with Thing, it will knock you out if it drains your life below 1. If you take a hit that drops your life to below 1, then the Indestructible will proc, but degen itself can kill you. So just be aware of that. But other than that, just play aggressive and you're fine here. Seaton has a great video on this, where he comes in with like a 3-star King Groot, does this line and just absolutely rampages, because everybody on this line is vulnerable to poison. They take 200% damage from poison, and so you can have a heck of a lot of fun on this particular line if you have a high level King Groot. But again, I'm sticking with the Thing team, because I'm worried about the boss. I'm not really worried about the line. So Vulture, it's pretty easy, just evade the SP1. Spider-Gwen's a little bit tricky. You probably want to evade and 3-hit combo. But obviously as the fight goes on longer, she'll evade higher and higher. So just make sure you use your light attacks more than your medium attacks, just in case she does evade and counters. but you can take care of her not too badly. She's probably going to be the trickiest fight on this path. Civil Warrior is pretty easy. The SP1 is just more of a nuisance because the armor ups. The SP2 is easy to evade, and he doesn't get armor ups from it. Sabretooth would normally be annoying, but you're bleed immune, so you don't really care. Evading the SP1 is probably the easiest way to get past this guy, but with a bit of practice, you could probably learn to evade the SP2 as well. If you are not comfortable with just taking this guy on with Thing, and you definitely can because there's no stun immunities here or stun reducers, you can bring Warlock instead. But I had a great old time with Thing, just taking hits, throwing the SP2, chain stunning him, and finishing him off. Red Skull normally is a bit tricky because his SP2 has a pretty nasty shock on it, but you're immune to the SP2, so even if you don't evade it, you don't have to worry about that. And the SP1 just builds up his armor ups. Normally you just evade the SP1 and keep hitting into him. It's going to be a bit of a longer fight because he's a bit tankier, but you can easily take care of this guy, no problem. And then start Spidey. Really all you want to do here is just kind of parry heavy so that you disable his AI, and then you can just go for it until the AI comes back on, and then parry heavy again and carry on like that. But once again, once you've parried heavy, take your hits, build up indestructible charges. This guy's pretty straightforward. And then you're in the penultimate boss, which is another Yellowjacket. Now this Yellowjacket is trickier. Yes, he's poison vulnerable and poison immune, but this guy is he's got this nice nasty combination, which is like Limber from before, but in addition to the Limber, he's got encroaching stun. So he's a little bit like Quake. Every 20 seconds, he'll basically stun you randomly for 3 seconds unless you're in the middle of throwing a special. Which means that now not only do you have to manage the fight in terms of your openings and your stuns, at least you don't have to worry about the SP1 because you can still block it. But not only are you trying to push him to his SP2 so that you don't have to worry about blocking or evading the SP1, and you're having to worry about openings with your Limber, and you're having to worry about doing the damage because he's 400,000 life. But also now you've got an additional concern in the fact that every 20 seconds, or every 19 seconds, let's say, you should be throwing a special. You should be in the middle of throwing a special, which means that you can't just at leisure choose which special you're going to throw, whether it be the SP2, the SP3, the SP1, and you can't choose at what rock stack you want to throw that, because obviously if you throw like the special 2 at 20 rock stacks, he's unblockable with a long stun. If you throw it at SP1, it does certain things and nullifies certain stuff. If you throw it at SP3, you go unstoppable and unblockable, but you don't get that leisure, because if you don't throw a special just as the encroaching stun is about to hit, then you're going to get stunned. Take that plus the combination of he might hit you with his specials, which costs a power stink, plus the fact that he's got increased stun with Stupefy, plus the Limber, and it makes for a lot more complex fight than 2.3 and 3.1. Saying that, so long as you are mindful of that encroaching stun and you throw a special just as that's about to hit, and you don't get hit by a special, this fight is pretty okay, because you don't have to worry about taking the SP1 to the face because it's not unblockable and he doesn't have a bias on it, and the SP2 is easy enough to evade. So if you're just careful of that kind of concept, then you should be okay here. But I am going to say this fight is a lot trickier than the previous ones, and I don't know of anybody else other than Thing that can really do this fight very, very well. So yeah, so then if you're able to take that one on without too much drama, then you come into the final chapter, 3.3, and this one, it's got a few different lines, but I think the easiest line was definitely not this one with Domino and Electro, I'll tell you that much, and it's probably not the one with Hyperion. It kind of depends. You can go through the Spillful line if you want to face off against Heimdall at the end, or you can go the Bleed Immune line and Bane. I found the Bleed Immune line probably easier, but it kind of depends on who you really want to face. So if you take that line, you have Hood, which is basically evade the SP1, win the game. Symbiote Spider-Man, you've already faced him before. Parry 3 hit. Storm, easy to evade the SP1. The SP2 thing is shock immune. Or if you bring Warlock here, his bleed's going to do a ton of damage because it's increased by 200%. Or Venom the Duck. Sentry, easy to evade the SP1, the SP2. Mephisto, you've done this guy with thing before, you know how to play him. Mordo is the only really tricky one, and for him, my kind of strategy is to sort of like back him up against the wall, and if he's gonna have power gain, or when power gain procs, he goes very defensive and just holds his block, and then you just heavy into him, and that disrupts his power gain and gives you a bit of a window to bait out his either SP1 or SP2, both of which are fairly easy to evade. So that's one path you can go, and then Hela is pretty easy, evade the SP1 and just knock her down. Be careful of the indestructible at the end. That's one path you can go. The second path you can go is taking on Green Goblin with power gain, which is probably a little bit annoying, but that's okay. And then Hire the Duck with... actually, the power gain path is probably going to be a bit more difficult. So I would suggest just take the bleed path with Bane, and then that should get you to the boss quite easily. And then you're at the final boss. And for the final boss, Kabam kind of thought like, oh, what was really annoying about the last boss and the boss before that and the boss before that and the boss in 2.1, and let's just put everything together for this boss. What about if we put every single annoying node we've had up to date in this variant on this one boss? And that's basically what you get with this final boss. And he is absolutely annoying. But he can be one-shot, but he is absolutely annoying. This one is the most complex boss because, of course, as we all know, Yellowjacket has Power Sting and he can stun you if you take a special to the face. He has Limber, so you can't just naturally create openings all day long. You can do it probably 6-7 times, but then there's going to come a time when you're going to have to work for your openings. He's got 450,000 plus life, so he's got a deep health pool. His special 1 is unblockable, which means if you don't evade it, you're going to take it to the face, and it is going to stun you. It's going to power sting you. But on top of that, not only is it unblockable, he also has encroaching stun, which means that if you don't throw a special every 20 seconds, he's going to stun you for 3 seconds. Which is extended because I think he also has Debilitate, which means debuffs last 100% longer. So that means that in theory, you could, through no fault of your own, take an SP1 to the face, have a power sting on you, and then you kind of have the impending doom choice of, am I going to throw my special and take the power sting damage, or am I going to take the encroaching stun damage for 3 seconds, getting stunned and getting hit, and potentially taking another special to the face. So that's kind of the complexity of this boss. So this boss, to one-shot him or to play really well against him, you have to kind of take all of those factors into account. Ideally with the SB1, you need to be... it's easier to evade it if you're further away from him. So if it's a little bit like Electro. If you're too close to him, when he throws the SP1, you can sometimes get clipped by the end of the laser. If you're far away from him, there's a bit of distance, and he throws the SP1 and you time it right, you can evade it. But also you kind of, at the same time, I'm saying that on one hand, but on the other hand, you need to play aggressively. Pushing up this SP2 is probably easier because I found his SP2 is way easier to evade. There's a lot easier Qs than the SP1. And just bearing in mind that that encroaching stun is going to dictate a little bit of what specials you throw when. So you're not going to have this beautiful fight where you're going to be able to go straight and launch your SP3 and double up all your indestructible charges and then go to the SP2. You're basically going to get whatever you're given on this fight based on the RNG and based on how he fights. If at 19 seconds you only have an SP1, guess what? That's what you're going to throw. And if you're having an SP2, then that's what you're going to throw. And if you have an SP3, that's what you're going to throw. And if you're trying to hold out your SP3 so that you get your indestructible charges, tough. You just have to kind of play around this guy. So I'm going to upload a video of me one-shotting this guy and kind of talk through the strategy in real time of what I did and what I was thinking about and what was kind of dictating my actions. But this guy is pretty tough, man. He's pretty tough. And if there's someone out there that can one shot him who's not Thing with the synergy, I would love to see it because I tried many times. I only managed to one shot him once, and it was very complex. It was a bit of a long fight. And thankfully, I had Heimdall as well to save my ass because otherwise it would have been a nightmare fight. So this is probably the toughest fight you're going to face. I would say this is tougher than that stun immune adaptoid. This is the fight that's probably going to take the most revives for most people. Um, and yeah, but it can be done. It can be done. Thing can do a lot of damage to this guy, and even if you mess up, you could probably take care of him within one or two or maybe 3 4 revives, even if you're not playing at your A game against this guy with the Thing synergy. But my suggestion is, once again, come in here with low life, take a lot of hits to begin with, build as many indestructible charges as you can. The more indestructible charges at the start of the fight, the quicker this fight is going to go. Uh, you know, the quicker it's going to end, basically. And you have to play really aggressively in this fight once you've got your indestructible charges up. So yeah, hopefully this helped you guys out. If it did, like, subscribe, leave a comment, share it with your friends, share it with your alliance, and stay tuned because I'll be uploading all the one shots for all the bosses from chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, and we're going to talk a little bit about strategy and what I was doing and how I was able to one shot them. Kakiteano, bros and girls. We'll see you then.